Hi everyone, this is Alex for FNC Poker, and this is the second episode of the series Me vs Solver. In the first episode, we looked at blind versus blind single raise spot, and there I also showed you how I set up these trees. Make sure to watch it if you haven't already. In this episode, we're going to do button versus big blind single raise spot, so get ready for it. Before we dive into it, if you want to purchase GTOwizard, make sure to do that using the link in the description. You will also get a discount. And if you're not familiar enough yet with GTO concepts, they have recently put out an interactive ebook called Daily Dose of GTO that can really help you get familiarized with it. You will be able to find also this in the description. So, as usual, I'm going to play 10 hands and I'm going to go through my thought process while doing so. If I make any mistake, I'm going to dive deeper into the solver and see what went wrong into my thought process. We will alternate between button and big blind, and also the lower number here is going to be the aggressive action for me. So that being said, let's get into it. The first board, king, king, queen. For me, it's just going to be a small range bet, maybe a solver would only bet like 90% of the times, but I think it's just fine to simplify this to a range bet. You see, this hand is just a pure bet. The turn is a 7, so now we need to think what size we want to use. We see the solver uses two sizes here. In practice, I would only have a 67 pot size bet, and that will allow me to keep value betting some queen X. In terms of bluffs, I think we want to unblock autofolds, and in that case the 10 is not that great because he's going to call some 10-9 gut shots, stuff like that, that are going to fold on the turn. And we also block some backdoor flush draws that might start folding here, so in that regard, yeah, the 10 is not great. We also don't really have a lot of equity. Also, I think we prefer having a club in this scenario because that doesn't block missed backdoor flush draws. We also need to think of the fact that when we range bet, we don't filter our range, so we are still going to have all of our pre-flop range on the turn, while he did filter his range on the flop, although the fact that he didn't check raise leaves him with not that many strong combos. Overall, our betting frequency here, I don't think it's going to be super high, probably around 40%, and this one is probably going to bet less than the board frequency, so maybe around 20% of the times I would say. This time I'm gonna go for a check. Oh, okay, so it's not a low frequency bet, it's actually a no frequency bet. And now facing a pot size bet here, which makes sense because he's going to be quite polar. I'm just going to fold this hand, 100 frequency fold. We didn't make any mistake, although we were a bit off with the frequency maybe in some points, but yeah, not enough to go for a deeper dive. Let's just go into the next hand. Okay, we see another paired board. This one is not going to be as good for the button, obviously, because he's not opening as many zigzags, and also his broadways are missing this board. He should be way more careful, he shouldn't range bet now. I don't think we should have many donks though on these textures, maybe some low frequency. I'm not going to use those in game. So just gonna go for a check, and facing a 40% pot size bet, we should actually have quite a high frequency check raise here, but with this hand, yeah, we should defend some ace highs as well, but this one I think is just going to be too weak to defend, so we're gonna go for a fold. This one not too interesting, so let's just go to the next hand. Again, we are big blind with ace-10 offsuit on a texture where we are not going to have any donks on. With this connectivity around the middle cards and also flush draw, button shouldn't range bet, so he increases his size to 40%. Again, this is a spot where we should defend some high cards, some ace highs, but it's going to be mostly when we have a backdoor flush draw, so I think this is gonna be a pure fold. Okay, so let's see what happened here, because we apparently made another mistake, which I would say is quite a bad one if we fold this when we are not supposed to. So against the 40% c-bet, which is still medium frequency, we see we are actually folding our ace highs without a backdoor flush draw, or obviously without a straight draw. But ace-10 is still strong enough to call, although you see when we unblock the backdoor flush draws, we prefer to call. That's what it seems like, because then we probably unblock a few of his bluffs, which we beat, which makes sense. But if you look at the EV, there's actually not really any EV loss. So it's quite a break-even hand when we don't have a backdoor flush draw. So yeah, the solver said we should pure continue, but in reality, I don't think we're losing much EV. Okay, let's go next hand then. We are button now, and we see an A7-5 flop. This board, again, with the connectivity around the middle cards and the flush draw, especially when it's ace high, we should be mixing here. And queen jack with the backdoor flush draw is probably going to make it into our c-betting range sometimes, although this is quite strong still, but we can get some better. King x to fold, we have a few good runouts to barrel on. I guess this would get in there around 40% of the times. A bit more. There's an 8 of spades, which is definitely not the greatest card for us. He now makes some 2 pairs. He's going to have some straights with 6-9, with 6-4. He's going to have some flushes. So we are going to have to be quite careful on this turn and start betting quite polarized. We do block some flushes though, and some strong ace-x with our jack. I think this hand could make it in our betting range sometimes. I don't think I will use this, just the 67%. So yeah, I think probably like half the times I would continue betting this. Quite close. And reverse a 9, now a 6 makes a straight. Obviously we can still have flushes, so we are going to have some bluffs here, and we're actually going to have probably the better flushes more often, because stuff like, you know, jack 5, queen 5, queen 8 are blocked by the board. And I think this is probably going to be one of the worst hands in our range, still blocking flushes, unblocking hands like pair plus draw, like 2 pairs that are probably going to fold to a big size here. So I think I'm going to put this in my overbetting range quite frequently, let's say 70%. Maybe in practice I would go pure, but don't tell anyone. Okay, nice hand. Let's move further. A lot of paired boards for us today. 9-3-3, it's actually a bit better for us as button, as big blind is not going to defend as many 3x. And also there's no connectivity, so it's very difficult to have draws in this spot. I think the solver is going to mix for maybe like a 70% frequency with our range here. In practice, I wouldn't even mind going quarter range, but I don't think people will fan enough defense or check raises. And the 7s here is still quite a strong value hand. If you think about it, big blind is not going to have many overpairs. That needs protection, can get value from worse, as he's supposed to call here a bunch of overcards and whatnot. So I think we are allowed to bet it probably more often than 31% of the times, maybe like 60, 70, I think I would bet here with 7s. Okay, we bet it half the times. And the 3 on the turn is quite interesting, because now we are going to have quite a huge advantage in overpairs. Yes, he is going to have some quads, but it's not going to be as many combos. I mean, it's going to be mostly suited, so just one combo of each, and we're still going to have some ace 3, king 3 along with our overpairs. So we are doing quite well in this spot. Therefore, I think we should be quite spoiler and start getting all the money into the pot. Again, as a double barrel, in practice I wouldn't really use 2 sizes here. So I think I would just go for this big overbet or a check. Therefore, I wouldn't really bet 7s. But I think if you are going to use this, betting 7s here makes quite a lot of sense. So let's go for a check. Oh wow. So 7s here should apparently be a pure bet for a small size. Again, gonna dive into the solver and see if this is actually the size that we are supposed to use most frequently or not. So yeah, you see, we should still value bet quite thinly here, and we should have this small size. What I'm quite curious is, do we actually lose EV if we give up the size? So you see here we have 56% EV 5.61, and if we remove the small size, we are not actually losing any significant EV. So now if we look at the strategy, 7 does become a pure check. So even though the solver says we blundered, this is not really the strategy that I would use. I like to play a bit more simplified, so we can just not agree with him. We did not blunder. And here on the river, I think now, even if we check and implement just a pot or check strategy, this would be a bit too thin to value bet. He could still have 9x, he could still have king x. He's definitely not supposed to bet all of them on the river. I think I'm just gonna go for a check. Next hand, we are on the big blind with ace 10 offsuit, board is jack 8-5. Not going to have any donks here, I don't think so. And the turn is a 9. This is quite interesting because on a straight completing turn, we're not going to have overbets anymore as we would have on a brick turn. Now, this is definitely not the greatest board for us. If you think about our range, there's still a lot of low stuff that just misses here. And if we think of our value, maybe we would be able to start value betting some 9x here, some 9x with added equity or some good 9x. But still, it's not going to be a very high frequency betting. And we're going to have quite a lot of 10x if you think about it. So I think we should prioritize ones that have a bit less showdown value, or at least the ones that have a diamond. Therefore, ace 10 here, I don't think it's going to be a very frequent bet, and definitely not as often as 70% of the times. Facing a delayed c-bet now, again we will have some bluff check raises, but I think that should come from hands that maybe draw to the nuts, such as king 10 if we have that, or some combo draws. At this point, we still beat some bluffs, such as king queen, such as 6-7, that decides to go for a delayed c-bet, and we still have an open-ender, so I imagine this is going to be a pure call. Okay, maybe not a pure call, but very, very frequently a call. And when the river is a 3, which is a complete brick, I doubt we are going to go for any donks here. Solver uses 300% pot, so yeah, I don't think this thing is going to ever be used. We check and hopefully we win at showdown. Guess the pot size bet on the river. I guess we could find some check shoves here, but again, I guess we want to have something that has a bit better blockers, maybe a pair and a 10, maybe a pair and a queen, something like that. I think this hand might want to bluff catch sometimes because we still beat a bunch of his bluffs, but I imagine that would be quite a low frequency, maybe like 20% of the times, and mostly gonna be a fold. Okay, so on the river, again, the frequency is a bit off, so we do have a bluff catcher, but I guess the ace, having the ace is quite good because we unblock his checkbacks, therefore he's like, you know, low showdown value checkbacks, therefore he's going to have more bluffs. And the 10 obviously blocks a straight, blocks hands like 9-10, jack-10 that could value bet. So yeah, and we unblock hands like 6-7, king-queen. So I do see why this would be quite a good bluff catcher. In game, I do imagine these lines are going to be a bit over bluffed, so maybe we can pure call this. King 6 deuce, this time a rainbow board. I think in practice I would like to go for a small range bet here, just because most opponents, even in 200, 500 and L, don't really find enough check raises against the range bet. Some of them still overfold. A solver, I think, would probably bet here like 75, 80% of the times. Queen 9, especially with clubs, I guess it might check back more than this, but definitely betting is not wrong, and range betting would be fine. So, okay, nice. There's a deuce, which is a bit more of a brick. He should use some bottom pair as check raises, so he's definitely not going to have a lot of them, and from pre-flop he's just not defending a bunch of deuce X. So yeah, this is not actually a very bad card. We should probably continue. It really depends. Considering it pairs, we're not really going to use overbets, so for this size I think we should still be able to value bet hands like queens and jacks. And in terms of our particular combo, I think it's nice to bluff with because it doesn't really block autofold, such as missed backdoor flush draw because we have clubs. It does block some king X, such as king 9, king queen, that decided not to check raise the flop. And if we get called by hands like 6x, 7s, 8s, and so on, we can still river pair against them. So I quite like this as a bluff. I think it's going to be relatively high frequency. And now river is a king of hearts. So if we think about it, we definitely have the advantage in king X here, considering he didn't check raise the flop. And from pre-flop, he's already 3-betting a bunch of king X that we open. And we also block some of the king X, which is good. Thinking if we can value bet thinner than a king here, if we can still go for it with queens or so, but I don't think so, considering that there's a flush on the board. Yeah, okay, so let's break it down. I think our best bluffs here are going to contain a heart, for sure, but this one, I don't think it's going to be that terrible. It unblocks 6x, it unblocks stuff like 7, 8s that call the flop. It's not going to have queens or 9s. So yeah, I think it does unblock folds. It doesn't really have showdown value. It does block a king, so I think we can go for a bluff with this one quite often. We also roll low, so yeah, let's see. Okay, so nice play. And he folds. Okay, let's do a few more hands quite quickly because this video is getting too long. 6-7-3, there is a straight available. Solver picks a big size c-bet, so it means we are a bit more polar now. I don't think we are going to want to bet a lot of ace-x. It doesn't mean we're never going to bet, but lower than the board frequency, so I think this is going to be most often a check. Actually, we do start betting it a bit more often than I expected. Turn is a 4. Now 5 makes a straight, which is definitely better for the big blind. So at this point, he's actually allowed to bet quite frequently and quite mergy. When he doesn't, he probably caps himself a little bit. So this is not going to be a range check for us. We're also not going to be allowed to go super crazy. This particular hand might get some better hands to fold. We do have some equity, but we also have some showdown value, so I imagine it's most often going to be checked back, but we rolled low, so I imagine maybe 20% of the times we will be allowed to see, but I don't think we're going to use very big sizes here, so almost 20% of the times. Now we river a flush, and we are obviously betting. I'm just thinking of the size we want to use. I think going small makes some sense because he will raise his worst flush draws and then we are going to be able to get it all in, and we will also assure calls from some weaker type of hands. So I think going this size obviously makes sense, and going for an overbet also makes sense because we have the nuts. Considering we roll low, we're going to go for the most aggressive action and pick an overbet. Okay, apparently we don't really want to use the small size almost ever, but we do sometimes. Ace-10 4, Ace-10 7, solver picks a polar strategy here, and when we use these overbet strategies, we're not actually betting many low ace-x, so mostly going for a check in this scenario, if not 100%. The 7 is not actually going to be the greatest for us because from the flop we should start bluffing with some bottom pair, and from pre-flop we don't really have that many 7x. He should still be quite protected here, so again we should be quite careful. I don't imagine this is a spot where we're just going to mindless delay c-bet, so we should actually check back some ace-x. But considering we are going to use a small size, we can bet these lower ace-x at some frequency. We roll quite low, so I think this is probably around the frequency that this hand want to bet. A bit more. Interesting. This is definitely a better card for him because we wouldn't really go for a delayed c-bet with a 10 on the turn all that frequently, but still against a quarter pot size, I don't think we get to fold any top pair, so pretty easy call. Our last hand, Ace-King 5. This is going to be a polar strategy, and middle pair here is almost never going to bet. So, what? Okay, this is an interesting one. I know we want to bet some middle pair at some 5-10% frequency usually in these polar strategies, so I'm quite surprised this is very, very often a bet. I think it's because we unblock backdoor flash draws, and a lot of worse hands that are going to call us, while maybe being able to realize our full equity when we are against an ace, if I were to think about it off the top of my head. But yeah, let's see what's actually happening. So yeah, you see, as I said, it seems to be the suits, because these are the only suits that want to almost pure bet. And this is because we are going to get called by so many worse hands. You see combo draws, flash draw, gut shots, and so on, a lot of which we unblock, as even the gut shots are going to call, you see, only with backdoor flash draws. So yeah, nice one. Unfortunately, didn't think of it. Let's finish the hand and the video. So now that we decide to check on the flop, the turn bringing a flash is actually not that great for us. So again, we should be quite careful here. In a polar strategy, we're going to have ace stacks, we're going to have flashes. So I don't think we get to start value betting this. Although there are going to be, you know, pair plus draws type of hands, king x, maybe stuff like king queen, king jack with a flash draw that might call us if we go for a small bet. So I don't think this is completely out of question to go for a small bet here with king queen, but I guess the standard play would be to just check. There's a 9, and again, this is a board where he should be quite careful with probing. He should still be quite protected here. In theory, he should definitely have strong hands that want to go for a check raise and a bunch of ace X. So I don't think we get to value bet as thin as king queen here. Nice. And we win against jack high. Thanks for watching, everyone. This was everything for today. Please let me know in the comments if you enjoyed the series and if you learned anything from it, and I'll make sure to come back with different spots. See you in the next videos.